The insects at a particular plant show in South America would rate it 1 star, do not recommend. That's because the featured plants on display in the Colombian capital aren't the kind insects like to eat, they're the kind that like to eat insects. 57 different species are on display at the Botanical Garden of Bogota. It's the 5th time it's featured carnivorous plants, from pitcher plants, the kind whose tubes are the point of no return for unsuspecting bugs, to sundews, whose gluey leaf tips force insects to stick around, to the world-famous Venus flytraps, which quickly enclose bugs in a kind of jail cell where they're digested. The director of the Botanical Garden says most of these plants are endangered, threatened by pressures on the ecosystem and the loss of biodiversity. And an attendee says knowing where they come from and how they function in the environment is important to knowing how to preserve them. Welcome to The World from A to Z, your nonpartisan source for news in 9 minutes or more. I'm Carl Azuz, always good to see you. To say there are Memorial Day sales going on this weekend in the U.S. sounds more like a commercial than a news story. It also sounds like a good thing for shoppers, and for the most part it is. But there's a concern woven in here for the U.S. economy. Consumer spending, when people buy stuff and services, accounts for about 70% of U.S. economic growth. That's why consumer spending is said to be the economy's backbone. Americans went on a spending spree during and after the COVID pandemic, and that continued through high inflation when prices kept increasing more and more. But now, experts say there are signs spending is slowing down.
Cost of childcare is up. Cost of food is up. For many people, the cost of rent is up. Just overall cost of living that's causing consumers to be a little bit more cost conscious.
And all that might have contributed to a stall in consumer spending between March and April, when economists were predicting an increase. Many consumers could be shifting their buying habits more to what they need instead of what they want, and many companies like Aldi, H&M, IKEA, and Target are reducing prices in the hopes that people will keep spending. Experts say discounts are expected on appliances, mattresses, and especially electronics. So how does Memorial Day weekend factor into all this? Businesses see shopping in the early summer months as a preview of what consumer spending might be like come back-to-school season in the fall and the Christmas and holiday shopping season that's so important to business profits. So companies and economists are closely watching to see what consumers do. Meantime, travel this Memorial Day weekend is expected to be intense.
Nearly 44 million people will travel 50 miles or more from home this Memorial Day weekend. 3.5 million of them are expected to travel by air, a 9% increase compared to 2019, according to AAA.
In 2005, that was the busiest Memorial Day weekend we've seen in 25 years. That was 4 years after 9/11 and right before the recession. So that year was particularly busy for travel. What we're seeing now is in 2024, 4 years after the pandemic, the travel industry has just come back in a big way.
Aixa Diaz with AAA says Memorial Day travel paints a picture of what we can expect for summer travel. Based on their projections, the season is expected to be sizzling hot. The Transportation Security Administration, for its part, also expects setting new records this summer. The agency predicts screening more than 3 million passengers on same peak days this upcoming season.
Airports are going to be packed. If you've flown recently, you know that most flights these days don't have many empty seats left. People are flying in big numbers.
Diaz says road trips are also expected to set a new record, with about 38 million people traveling by car. I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
For those who are driving, gas prices in the U.S. are about 5 cents higher per gallon than they were last year at this time. The national average on Monday put them at $3.59 a gallon. Experts say don't just fill up your tank for a road trip. Check your tire pressures, including that of your spare if you've got one, and make sure your car's in good shape before hitting the road and possibly fighting traffic. While we're traveling, here's a fun fact. The capital of Indonesia, which is Jakarta, used to be known as Batavia. Today's World of Viewers starts in a different Batavia, the village in Ohio. That's where Mr. Royer's class is watching from Batavia Middle School, home of the Bulldogs. In the Golden State of California, it's the Bison who are roaming at Liberty High School. Mr. Anderson's class is with us from the community of Winchester. And some Tigers are here too. Mocksville, North Carolina is where Mrs. McClamrock's class is online. Great to see y'all at South Davie Middle School in the Tar Heel State.
Word and out. Who is the only U.S. president to have been issued a patent? Thomas Jefferson, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt. U.S. patent number 6,469 was granted for a device intended to lift boats that had gotten stuck, and the future president who received it was Abraham Lincoln.
On this date in world history. Lincoln's patent was issued on this date in 1849, and the device was a model. The boat lifting invention was never actually built, but Lincoln did have, like, some other stuff he went on to do. Hey, speaking of patents, these dudes named the Wright brothers got one on this date in 1906 for a device they'd invented in 1903. A flying machine! That's how you have to say it. Anyway, the Wrights were originally rejected in their 1903 patent filing, but after they hired a patent lawyer, they received it 3 years later. And this was the date in 1960 when the South American nation of Chile was struck by the largest earthquake ever recorded. Its estimated magnitude was 9.5. It hit near the port city of Valdivia and triggered a tsunami that rolled across the Pacific, claiming lives thousands of miles away. More than 2 million Chileans were left homeless. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. The line of Samuel Taylor Coleridge's rhyme of the Ancient Mariner describing intense thirst, but the inability to sip the water beneath the ship. 226 years after that was published, people still have a need to turn saline water into fresh, drinkable water, but they also have an increasing number of ways to do that.
You're being lowered into the ocean off the coast of Norway. A company called Waterize is deploying an innovative approach to desalination. Now, it's not innovative in how the salt water is made drinkable. That's still done by reverse osmosis, pushing water under high pressure through fine membranes to separate the salt. But that takes a lot of energy. So Waterize is lowering its desal unit a quarter mile into the ocean and letting hydrostatic pressure, the weight of the water above, help push seawater through the membranes. This saves energy compared to relying entirely on heavy-duty pumps.
And what we simply do, use pump on the other side to create an under-pressure suction pressure. So we are pulling the water through rather than pushing it through the membranes. And we save somewhere between 30 and 40%.
Waterize's method also has less impact on ocean life. And of course, there's no need to use up land to build a big desalination facility. The subsea module is connected to land by a water pipeline and an umbilical cable that provides the base ship with power and communications. Up and running, Waterize says one of its subsea units can produce 13 million gallons of fresh water per day, and that's important.
We see that the need for desalinated water is just increasing dramatically.
Waterize is just one of the companies around the world working on desalination. The challenge for all of them is doing that on a large scale in an affordable way and then bringing it to market. Finally today, there are light shows with drones and there are world record light shows with drones. This might look like one of the first kind. Pretty, colorful, but nothing super butterfly you haven't seen before. Then again, another view shows us this is next level. It's all part of the same show. It took flight recently over the city of Incheon, South Korea, and it was a recreation of the record-breaking drone display that a company put on early this month. The record show involved 5,293 unmanned aerial vehicles all droning at once. That was 129 more than the previous record set in China. And like with any drone show, you gotta give them props. The bright light flight of fancy airported eyes to the skies lifting off from a sort of aero drone to get and give cover while it hovered like no other skyward show. And while we're now cleared to take off, we won't run away before thanking you for controlling your screen to watch us remotely. We are the world from A to Z, and you mean the world to me. I'm Carl Azus.